Everybody, welcome.
Morning.
Thank you.
So please,
Thank you. Happy to be joining you guys.
yes, lovely to have all of you with me this morning, and please bear with me as I am learning how to use this technology. I've been on the receiving side quite a lot. So
as we get more people on board, it may be a good idea for everybody to mute themselves because then it helps with the bandwidth.
Yes, Kim, I've set an automatic setting for everybody to be muted from the word go. Yes, okay.
I saw yes.
Yes. So does everybody know how to unmute themselves when they need to talk?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Okay. Right.
At the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, if you put your mouse there, you'll see two things. One is mute and one is video. If you just click on the mute, you'll get a diagonal line through it.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? Okay, so I think let's kick off. So welcome, my name is Itha Taljaard, as you would all know by now. I think just in terms of the actual session, what I found was useful for me when I joined a session was that the facilitator quickly introduced us to Zoom if anybody doesn't know how to use it there yet. So you will see you have different views. You can have just a speaker view or a gallery view, so you can go and change what it is that you see on your screen. Sorry, it's the wrong things that's changing. There is a chat box where you can add comments and ask any questions if you have any questions. You can mute yourself, so I have muted everybody by default, so if you do want to make a comment, you need to unmute yourself. I'm going to try and work with breakout rooms. That is that's what I would like to do today. I tried to test it yesterday, but it's difficult to test when you're just on your own. When I take you into a breakout room, what you will find is it takes a few seconds before you go to the room. There will be a time limit for the breakout room, so it's smaller groups that will have conversations. There will be a timer that comes up about 90 seconds before the breakout session is finished. If you react to that, it will literally beam you, Scotty, out of that room back into the main room, and you're going to sit on your own there. So you don't have to do anything when the message comes up, except that and this is this section over here, it's just that you need to take note of the fact that the time is about to be finished. So wrap up the conversation that you are busy with, because the Zoom technology takes no note of whether you're busy talking or not. It will just zoom you out of that room. Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, cool. The second thing that I would like to go to is on this side over here. So you're going to be investing at least 90 minutes of your time, maybe a bit more, maybe a little bit less. I do know there's some people that need to leave a bit earlier. The session is being recorded, so it will be available for all of you. I will be referring to quite a lot of reading and links and authors, and I will make sure that all of that information is also available with the recording after the session. Okay. In terms of getting the best value for your time, because it is a 90-minute investment, the first thing that I would like to suggest is that switch off your phone, switch off your email, switch off your Facebook, close any tabs that you might have open. The brain is highly, highly distractible, and every single time you shift away from the screen into another place, you will lose some of the content, you will lose some of the conversation, and really you just, wasting your own time now. And then the second thing that I'd like to point your attention to are these two questions over here, which is about setting your intention for the session. So I'd like to give you just a couple of minutes and for all of you to quickly in the chat box section to answer these two questions. The first one is, what would you like to get from these 90 minutes? Because that helps us to set our intention. And then the second thing is, are there any questions that you are looking for answers for? So I might not be able to answer all those questions during the session, but it doesn't matter. Just by being cognitively aware of the questions that you are looking for answers for, your brain is more open to the learning. That's number one. And number two, of course, I can also respond to the questions after the session. So I'm going to give you 2 seconds or 2 minutes if everybody can quickly answer those 2 questions. Your intent for the session, you know, what do you want to get out of it, and what questions would you like to have answered? The session is being recorded for those of you who joined us lately, a little bit later. Some lovely questions. That's a good question. Would we be doing this if we weren't on lockdown? Okay. Sometimes the admit doesn't work so fast. Okay, so for those people who's just joined, what we are doing, you will see on the screen, everybody is just busy answering these 2 questions. What do you want to get from the 90 minutes? So that's setting your intent. And what questions are you trying to find answers for? Right. Everybody that's just joined, we are answering these 2 questions. What do I want from these 90 minutes, and what would I like to have answers for? And for those of you who joined late, the session is being recorded. Okay, so I'm going to start while you are still busy writing some answers. But I think the first thing here is actually the question about, is it possible to be happier? And so in terms of the structure of the session, I'm going to have 2 sections. The first one is just around the science of, is it possible to be happier? And then the second section is about, what is it that you can actually do to be happier? Sorry, I'm still admitting people to the session. What it is that you can do to be happier, and I'm going to focus on 3 things there: base drivers for happiness, a conversation around gap versus gain, and then a framework by Paul Dolan. Let me actually get the book quickly in front of me. Paul Dolan, who's written a book and has done quite a lot of work on happiness and what does it mean and how to focus on it. So I hope we will be able to cover all of it. I'm going to send you into breakaway rooms to answer some questions during the process, because I always find that we learn from each other and we can learn from each other's experience, especially in the environment that we are finding ourselves in at the moment. So what does the science say? So from a science point of view, it's actually quite pessimistic. So what the science says is, first of all, that we're all born with a set point. So there's genetics that predetermine how happy you are going to be as an individual, and that you can do things to increase your happiness, but you will probably always go back down to the baseline of what is predetermined by your genetics. So thank your mother and father and grandfather and grandmother for that one. Okay. And what is interesting, what I find is that if you were happy as a child, so if you were a happy child, the chances are that you probably grow up to be a happy adult. And if you were an unhappy child, the chances are that you probably grow up to be an unhappy adult. So that's a very pessimistic scientific point of view. Then the second thing from a science point of view is what I call traits or personality. And there's definitely things from a personality point of view that influences us in terms of how happy we are versus how not happy we are. And in particular, there is some whether you an extroverted, social kind of person versus being neurotic and more towards depression. So that will influence your ability to be happy. And of course, we know personality is something that can be changed, but it is an incredible amount of work. So it's not that simple and that easy to change our personalities. The third section in the science that is available around happiness is what we call hedonic adoption. And what does that mean? It actually means that as individuals, as human beings, we have this remarkable ability to adapt to whatever the circumstances are. So think about it. If you climb into a hot bath, when you just climb in, it's like, ouch, this is quite warm or hot, the temperature of the bath. But then your body adapts to that temperature, and then you don't feel the temperature anymore because you got used to the temperature. Now, from a mind point of view, the mind does exactly the same thing. We adapt to change. So we think that something is going to make us really happy. So imagine you've just bought a new house and you move into your new house. And of course, we are really happy. We've got this new house. It's an amazing thing. But we get used to the new house. So the happiness that is associated with getting the new house over time goes away because we get used to the new house. It's the same with a new car, with a new job. Anything that is new in our lives, we eventually get used to. So we get used to stuff. The nice thing, of course, the positive thing about that is that even when there's negative events, we might think, oh my gosh, I'll never recover from this. This is never going to get any better, is that your mind does adapt to a negative event just like it adapts to a positive event. And we build what we call psychological immunity. So sorry, things are in my way, yeah. So that's from a science point of view, sort of three things that's not that positive in terms of how much we can actually adjust and become more happy. There's also these two psychological tendencies that gets in our way. So I've talked about the hedonic adoption. So we get used to stuff, doesn't matter how amazing it is. If you do it for long enough, it doesn't really make you happy anymore. And here's just another example. Let's say you're craving a piece of chocolate right now, and your partner runs into the room and puts your favorite chocolate in front of you on the desk while you're busy listening to this webinar. In the moment, it really makes you happy because that's something that you've craved. But if it comes in and it gives you another chocolate, it's nice, but it's not quite as nice. The third one, the fourth one, by the 10th one, it's really not nice anymore. And that's exactly what happens in terms of how we experience events and stuff. The other thing that we do is, and this is very interesting work that has been done, is that we are actually not able to forecast how things will impact us. So we're not very great. We're not very good at knowing what makes us as people happy. And that's a big part of the work that I want to talk about a little bit later on with Paul Dolan, that says that we need to spend more time to become aware of what it is that makes us happy, and then start to do a lot more of what makes us happy and stop doing what doesn't make us happy. But I'm going to get to that a little bit later. So in terms of the effective forecasting, we suffer from what we call an impact bias, and we tend to think, you know, maybe, let's say I'm getting divorced and man, I'm never going to be happy again. This divorce has just ruined my entire life and it's going to last forever and ever, and it's not going to pass. But actually what happens is we get over especially negative impacts far, far, far quicker than what anybody actually anticipates. And a lot of experiments has been done to show this. So we are unable to predict how long we're going to be impacted by an event or by an experience, and therefore we are actually not able to understand how happy or how unhappy something is going to make you or me. So with that in mind, if I want to ask you all a quick question. When this whole COVID-19 lockdown thing was starting to be talked about, how much impact did you think that was going to have on you as an individual? Okay. So if you just think on a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 is, well, I think the impact's not going to be that bad, I'll be okay, I'm going to adapt very quickly, versus 10, oh my gosh, my world's going to come to an end, my children, what do I do with the people who's working for me? What about income for a lot of people like myself who works for myself? Suddenly every single thing has been cancelled that was in my diary. So what did you expect? And now we are about 12, 13 days into lockdown. What is your experience now? You know, how long did it take you? How long did you think it will take you to adjust and adapt to the COVID-19 lockdown environment? And how long did it actually take you? Anybody want to maybe quickly make a contribution and maybe give an answer to that, just how different those two was? Anybody? You just need to unmute yourself.
Itha, hi, it's Moni here.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. So I guess the contribution that I want to give around this, and maybe from an impact perspective, my younger sister lives in Shanghai. So when it started, I feel like I'm living through what the 6 weeks we were living through with her on the phone were like. So it's almost like as these things, as it happens, as it comes, as the lockdown, it was almost like we were already prepared, because I was on the phone to her every single day.
Yes.
For that time period when they were under serious lockdown and all of that. So I'm kind of just taking it with the flow, like one day at a time, and remaining hopeful. Like as I see how they have, like at the moment, it's turned around. Like she's gone back to work, even though they're not really social in terms of restaurants or anything like that. But there's a little bit of gone back to normal that has happened when it looked like that they wouldn't get to that. So I think that's making me remain like hopeful and just one day at a time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So I'd say maybe like 1. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hi, Pina here.
It's Tracy here.
Yes.
I think that I am naturally most probably somebody who put something off, initially saying it's not going to impact me. So initially I think I was probably around about 3 to 4, thinking, well, it's over there, therefore it can't come here. I'm very much aware that it is happening globally, but it's almost like you don't want to face it, so you put it off to say, oh, it's not going to come near us. So initially I was, yeah, okay, it's a very much of a big concern. We need to be aware of what's happening in the world. But for me personally, I think I believe that I wouldn't be impacted by it. But since we have gone into lockdown, the realization starts to come through as to, okay, this is bigger than what I thought.
Anybody else?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Yvonne.
Hi. Just from my perspective, I actually, when this all happened, I was in a stage of transition. So I think just looking at it, I didn't I didn't have a preoccupation about it and thinking that it would be that bad. But all in all, it turned out very positive in the sense that, well, for me, it allowed some time that I could do things that I couldn't do before. And then also in terms of just the peace and the fact that the world is getting healed, and also in terms of my bigger family, and the impact that it have on them. They're not in South Africa, but if I look at that, it also has a healing effect on them on account of the fact that we being more quiet and we can't sort of, it's not free for everybody and you can't actually do what you always wanted. So I think very positively, yeah.
Okay.
And technology, I think just the fact that we're growing in technology, especially for me. Thanks.
Yes. Anybody else? I'm just trying to work out how to get you into conversation rooms for the next exercise. If anybody can help me with that, because I can't see where to do that.
It's Sadia, can I share? Hello.
Who wants to speak? Sadia?
Hi, can I share?
Yes.
Sadia. Yeah.
Sadia, yes.
Okay, so yes, sorry. No, I've actually started keeping track of it, from the time it started. And I think I realized, how it was going to affect us. But I think for me personally, I'm going to say I've been through a bit of turmoil, fighting, arguing, and then coming to peace with it as well. Because before COVID-19 hit South Africa, I was actually in the Western Cape working for a full week. And then when I got back, I got very ill. So I was then told, to self-isolate, and I did self-isolate. I went back to work, and I was still not better. And then I had to stay off work for a few more days as well. And eventually I started showing all the signs of COVID-19. And being in an area where I only worked with foreigners, I started wondering, do I have COVID-19? Because I kept on shrugging it off to the aircon and the aeroplane and all of those things. So I think for me, I was at a stage where I was panicking, but I kept on telling myself I am fine. Till eventually I decided I'm going to go for the test and just, put myself at ease. And in that time, I think it was quite difficult for me in the sense that I self-isolated. I sent my kids to go and stay with my family, so I was completely home alone. And while you're waiting for the results, you're having all of these thoughts, but you're trying to stay positive. And I'm a transformation coach, so I was trying to use my techniques on myself as well. And I think at some point it made it a bit worse for me as well, because one of my friends that had come to visit me also got the flu. And then her negativity started rubbing off on me, because then she said, if you've got it, that means you gave it to me. So, it was all of those emotions. But I think, eventually when I got my results, and it was after we went into lockdown, so one of my fears was that my elder son had to come home, because they didn't want me staying alone in case, whatever happened. But I haven't received my results, by that time. And listening to the news and keeping track of what's going on, eventually the results came and it was negative. But I think just, living through that fear of not knowing, and having all of the symptoms, it just, and everybody kept on saying it's your mind. And I'm saying, but it's not my mind, because I know the type of person I am. And I'm very optimistic. So I think, from that perspective, it has been it was a bit difficult, because I couldn't go to shops. So basically, I'm in lockdown way before lockdown even started. But you know what, at least now it's much better. I'm the type of person that keeps busy, so I'm always studying, learning something new, doing something. And at least I have the freedom to go outside and still get some air because I do have my own yard as well. So that's not too bad.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. So,
Hello.
hi.
Itha, hi, Pina here. I just
Yeah.
wanted to share, I've been, I've kind of been journeying with this thing, but over there, because we've got friends who are working in Southeast Asia. So this has been coming on, and we've been hearing from them, and they've been sharing with us that they've been in lockdown, etc., in Vietnam, and they haven't been able to go to teach at the school, etc. So then I have a sister who went to visit a family member in northern Italy. So she's now stuck in the epicenter of all of this. So I've been journeying with this since kind of February, March, and it's been very scary. So, when kind of reality hit our shores, I thought, I've been well prepared, and I perfectly understand what one needs to do, etc., etc. However, it was not really the case until it's actually directly impacting on one's own existence or your own reality. One really doesn't fully comprehend the enormity of all of this.
Yes.
So I'm kind of, and here I thought I had built the kind of psychological or fear immunity, if you know what if I'm making myself clear. But one hasn't, because it's right here, and it's here in our face. And yeah, so I'm still trying to adjust to all the fear that goes with it, and the survival aspects, because since, from a Maslow perspective, I feel I'm still in that base at primary need. Thank you.
Thanks. Just quickly, just from a logistical point of view, I can see my paid for Zoom hasn't been activated yet, which means I cannot put people into smaller groups, which is a pity. So I do apologize for that. I was really hoping to do that. So I want to go on to the next thing about what it is that you can actually do to be happier. And there is a couple of base drivers. If you need to have these things in place before we start to talk about the rest. The first thing is you have to sleep well. If you sleep well, you have more mental energy and resources to cope with things, on a daily basis. And I think you all know that, but I cannot stress this enough. You really need to make a point of sleeping a good 8 hours. Some of us 7 hours, some of us 9 hours. What are the kind of things that you can do to sleep better? Make sure that there's no lights in the room. Don't have a heavy meal for at least 2 hours before you go to bed. Avoid any devices that has a blue light. The blue light frequency keeps you awake, and it impacts the pituitary gland that releases the melatonin, so therefore you don't sleep as well as you could. Comfortable bed and a room that's not too hot or too cold. So really, and the other thing about this is, in the current situation, being at home and not having the kind of routines that you normally are used to, is to make sure that you still create a sleep routine. Your brain loves that kind of routine, so that your brain knows it's now sleeping time, and that you stick to the same kind of schedule. So don't go to bed much later and get up much later. Rather stick to the kind of patterns that you used to have before the whole lockdown. So sleep is one of the base drivers for feeling happier. The second one, and I'm sure you all know this, is exercise. You need to move. What am I finding personally, and I'm sure quite a lot of you are finding the same thing, is right now we are all probably moving less. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that we can't go and exercise the way that we would normally exercise. It's got to do with the fact that normally we would move from a meeting to another meeting. We will go and grab a cup of coffee with somebody while we have a conversation. There's more movement during the kind of times that we spend in the office, and even for me, who's been working from home for 13 years, so this is not a big adaptation for me. But what I am finding is, because I'm moving from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, I'm actually sitting far more than what I've ever sat in my life before. So I think all of us need to be a lot more conscious of the need to move, and that you try and bring in some exercise, and maybe everybody can quickly share what kind of things you are doing at the moment within the confined spaces that you have found worked really well for you from an exercise point of view. It's really so important to exercise, and I'm going to come back to that one. I just want to go to the third one, which is making progress. So, and this is this innate thing about human beings, that we like to be able to make progress and have a sense of achievement, you know, that I've been able to do something today that was useful or valuable. So maybe in the morning when you wake up, just to actually be quite deliberate to decide for yourself, what do I want to achieve for today, and then work towards that so that you have that sense of achievement. So I think really to think about that. So let's quickly talk a little bit about the move. I walk around my house, down dog yoga, boxing and walking around the house, stretches and swimming, skipping challenge, lovely. Somebody else that I spoke to said what he did was, because he was confined, he had to be in quarantine, and he was in a 600 feet square meter space, and he said what he decided to do was every day for 45 minutes put on his absolute favorite dancing music. And he's not a dancer, and he's never really danced before, but for 45 minutes he danced his heart out. Okay, and even though he's out of quarantine now and he's back with his family, he says the exercise and the impact of that the exercise is such an impact on him that he's actually continuing with doing it, even though he has, you know, other kinds of things that he could be doing. Pop sugar, swim and exercise in the lounge, walking in the garden, online Pilates classes. Fantastic. So I think there's lots of ideas there. Just the fact that we are at home and we are in confined spaces does not give us an excuse not to move. So 3 base drivers for better happiness: sleep, move, and a sense of achievement. Anybody want to add anything to that in conversation-wise? Unmuting. Nobody? Okay. I'm going to go to the next line. So this is interesting work done by Dan Sullivan, and then Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's also a psychologist, has added some of his insights today. So Dan normally works with entrepreneurs, and he's got this framework of gap versus gain. So, and a great example is, imagine you, so imagine you driving from home. This is a long time ago, but imagine you're driving from home, and on your way home, you stop at a cafe and you buy your son or your daughter or your husband or your wife a chocolate bar. And you get home and you give them the chocolate bar, and you can just see from their face and their reaction that actually this is not really what they wanted. They actually prefer a different chocolate bar. So let's say you got them a lunch bar, but actually they prefer a Kit Kat. Okay, so that response is the one of, this is not really what I wanted. I'm actually missing out because you didn't give me the chocolate bar that I'm looking for. So the thing that wasn't, that could have been, is almost that. It's like that fixed mindset. There's a gap. There's a gap in terms of, so let's need to move that out. In terms of what it is that I wanted versus what I got. The gain, on the other hand, is when you arrive with a chocolate bar, and whoever it is that you bought the chocolate bar for, despite the fact that it might not be their favorite chocolate bar, is like, oh wow, this is amazing. Thank you so much for thinking of me. Because they've gained something that they never had before. So the mindset is a growth mindset. It's a mindset of gaining rather than losing out. Okay, so in terms of the gap, if you look at the gap at the top there, what happens here is if you tend to focus on the gap, then you tend to focus on goals and objectives and ideals, and you want to measure yourself against those, and you're bound to be disappointed because our ability to achieve those goals is impacted by context, by situations, by all sorts of things. So it's very often not possible for us to actually achieve what we set out to achieve, or maybe not in the way that we would like to have done. Whereas if we focus on, okay, so this is where I was yesterday, this is where I am today, then I've made progress. So you can see how that then links back to the base drive of happiness, of making progress. So if I can shift my mindset to say, I've made progress from where I was before to where I am now, what is it that I'm going to be doing next? So when you do that, your brain has this amazing ability to then expand the focus and to see more and expect even more, because it's about, I'm looking for the progress and I'm looking at what it is that I can do in order to achieve the progress, rather than here's the goal that I wanted to achieve and I'm disappointed because I didn't get to that. So gap versus gain. So if I go to the next slide there, what Dr. Benjamin then talks about is how you can use gratitude to transform and shift from the gap to the gain kind of mindset. And the first thing that he mentions is that gratitude is this amazing thing that triggers a mental and an emotional state that can actually sustain throughout the entire day. And you can use gratitude to transform your past, your present, and your future. So I'm going to first talk a little bit about the past. So the interesting thing about the past, of course, is that it's never that our past is unbiased in terms of how we remember it. You know, there's certain moments that stick out, there's certain things that we pay more attention to. And of course, we can choose how we remember our past. So I can choose to remember that my mother liked my brother more and that he was the favorite in the house. Or I can choose to remember the investment that my mother has made into my education, and when she went the extra mile, you know, towards making me successful, or the kind of sacrifices that she had to make in order for me to go to university, etc., etc. So I can choose and reframe how I remember the past. So memories of the past really is experiences in the present. So if you think about that, if I choose how I remember my past, and if I choose to reframe and I focus on the gain from past experiences rather than the gap, the things that I didn't get, then that will influence how I experience my present. Because memories of the past are the experiences in the present. So reshape your memory of the past by focusing on what did you gain from those experiences, from those choices, from those decisions, from whatever it is that you've had in your life. When we talk about the present circumstances, so let's look at lockdown and COVID-19. And so this was where I wanted to have a breakout session, but I think let everybody contribute towards this. So the first question is, how do you think you can reframe your current circumstances so that it shifts from the things that I am missing out on, the gap, to the gain? What it is that I'm gaining from being locked down? You know, where's the gains for me in this? There's a second part to that, which is, what am I capable of doing? So I'm not completely, what's the word I'm looking for? My hands are not completely cut off. I'm not completely, my gosh, I can't think of the word now. Anybody helps me? This is silly. Anyway.
Is this number 2, Ilta?
Yes, yes.
What are you capable of doing? So what are your enablers, maybe?
Yeah. So
what are you able to do?
Yeah, so yeah, I just wanted to say it's not like I'm completely incapable of doing nothing. There's a lot of things that I'm capable of doing. There's a specific
So,
word
so
that I'm
how can
looking.
you make this work type of
Yes,
thing within the
exactly,
constraints?
exactly,
What can I do that could work?
Are you
absolutely.
trying to say you're not handicapped?
Yeah, thank you. That's the word. Thank you. I'm not handicapped. Just the fact that I'm locked down doesn't mean I'm handicapped. I still have huge amounts of capabilities. How do I use those capabilities to transform my current circumstances into something where I can gain from those circumstances? And then the third part of this is, of course, then what am I grateful for in the current environment, in the current lockdown COVID-19 environment? So I would like us to have a conversation about those three questions, because by having a conversation about those, maybe all of us can shift our current feelings and level of happiness to a higher level by thinking about those questions. So if I think about the first question, how can you reframe your current circumstances? So maybe I can change from my house feels like a jail and I'm suffering from cabin fever to my house is my safe place. You know, that's a way to reframe it from a loss or a gap to a gain. So that would be an example. So I'm going to open it up. So for anybody who would like to add to this conversation and answer those three questions so we can learn from each other.
I'd like to talk. It's Bianca.
Mm.
I felt that I've been given an unprecedented time to reflect and to create. At first, I was very anxious about the fact that as a trainer and as an HR consultant, my work was cancelled and put on hold. And then I just said, okay, fine. At least I do have some provision for this time. Many people don't. But I've been given an unprecedented 3 weeks to reflect and be quiet and create. And I do have kids at home. I have a chance to be a mom. I'm normally very busy. I normally don't cook often or bake. And I've just been creating memories with them. But in the back of my mind, there is a grieving process. I'll sometimes find myself in tears, just thinking about, you know, what lies ahead. But thank goodness, you know, just for me personally, just to dig into my faith and stay positive.
Thanks, Bianca.
Hi, it's Yvonne here. I spoke to somebody yesterday. They in a small town called Symphonia, and they in the hospitality industry. They've got a lovely place where you can stay overnight. And I was one of the people who had to cancel. But in short, she said, Yvonne, it's fine because I've got a 9-year-old son, and it's the first time in all of this time that we can actually spend time with him. So her reframing,
Yes.
getting back to the family, and I think that's for lots of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Itha. I've kind of made it an intention and a goal to connect with friends whom perhaps I haven't been engaging with for sometimes a year or two or several months. So every day it's kind of a ritual. At afternoon tea, it's kind of in the diary. So then I'm going to, who am I going to call now? You know, whether they're in South Africa or whether they're abroad. It's really wonderful to reconnect with old friends and family.
Excellent. So that is, yeah.
Sorry. Tracy here again. So what I did is at the beginning of lockdown, I try to think about all the benefits of lockdown. So instead of looking at, oh my heavens, I'm going to be locked down, I'm going to cut away from everything for 21 days, ha ha ha. So I started to think, okay, what are the benefits of working from home, being in lockdown? And I've come up with about 20 odd, the intentions to make it to 100 of what you can do differently. And I think everybody's given some things like being more creative, getting into a different routine, changing your thought pattern from the fact that that was normal and now this is not normal, but making this to be more of a normal. Because if you think about it, in 21 days, or when we finish lockdown, if we don't get extended, then our normal is not going to be normal anymore, because we're going to have to shift from the shift that we've already done in lockdown. We're going to have to shift to a new normal again. So it's a change. So I've tried to think of the positives that I've gained. I'm on my own. My sister lives with me, so it's just the two of us. So I don't have children like everybody else does to have to try and entertain. It's just myself that I have to entertain. And it's allowed me to think of all my creative side and to bring that in. I still work from a 9 to 5. I work for a shipping company, so that continues. So it's just a different way of doing business. So I'm actually quite enjoying this time, actually. So it's fun. Thank you.
Good.
It's just another thing here, Pina here. I think this is a wonderful time to actually discover traits and potential in ourselves. Because, you know, we've been given this wonderful opportunity to introspect and reflect on our very own capabilities. And I'm discovering new things about myself, new ways of engaging with the world, or just being creative, or being thrust into a digital, you know, virtual training. I mean, that's going to be our next step. Because I don't see classroom training, you know, being rolled out too hurriedly. So now I'm going to be upskilling on how to have virtual training. So I think there's so much potential, and as you quite rightly say, it is a mindset. What else is it that we can do to make this thing work? And what good can come of all this angst and what seems to be a very dark place that we're in.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hi there. This is Danielle. I've actually found myself in quite a different situation. We were busy doing renovations before the lockdown, and I moved in with my family. So there are now 8 of us living together, which at first was a little bit stressful, but I'm seeing now how I'm creating new memories with my parents, how my kids are connecting with their grandparents, and how we are doing family meals together, like cooking together, baking together, and it's been really great. Also, I'm from the NGO world, so it was really hard leaving a community that needed our services as well. So it's also looking innovatively in terms of how do we connect with people through their cell phones, because we do family strengthening, and how do we continue doing those services even when we're not face to face, which is tricky, but I think we're getting there somehow.
Fantastic. Anybody else?
Sorry, just a short one. I did put it in writing. Yvonne here. I don't like shopping, not at all. But anyway, so this was a really like a practical reframing. I realized that, well, all in all, I will do my shopping differently in future, and will be a much stronger planner with regards to that. Thank you.
So I do think it is interesting, because it's forced quite a lot of us to rethink what we do and how we do it, and fast forward, I suppose, things that we've been thinking about. I know for me, from a personal point of view, I've been thinking about creating online offerings probably for 3 years already, and I've just never done it. You know, don't have enough time to do it. There was no real incentive to actually invest the time and the effort. But now I have to. And it's actually amazing what is out there. Sharon, you want to make a contribution?
Yeah, funny, you actually preempted it. I was going to say technology is not my friend, and if I can avoid it, I will. So this is forced me to confront some of those fears and to start to adapt and be more open to using technology more regularly. And I have a household of teenagers, including a new girlfriend, one of the boys. So this has been a real bonding experience, and so far, so things are going well.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm going to stop the share of the slides, and I'm just going to go back there, which is much nicer. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the work around how can you actually design your own happiness. And so Paul Dolan has what he says, a scale of pleasure versus purpose. And if you look at it like this and you say, on the one hand, am I a purpose seeker, a purpose engine, or am I a pleasure seeker? Am I this pleasure machine? What is it that actually makes me as an individual happy? And of course, for all of us, it is a balance between those. Some of us are far more on the purpose-seeking side, and some of us are far more on the pleasure-seeking side. Now, if you can place yourself, so if you think about it, if you can just quickly think about it for yourself, do you think you are more towards purpose-seeking, so more serious, more focused, more looking at what can I do that's meaningful in life and value contribution, or are you more towards the pleasure-seeking side? So, you'd go out there and do things for fun and look for things to do for fun and have great experiences. Where would you put yourself on that scale? So you don't have to answer that. The thing about this scale is that there is a mix. There's a mix that is optimal for any of us. So I know for a fact that I am far more towards the purpose-seeking side than what I am towards the pleasure-seeking side. And I know my husband is far more towards the pleasure-seeking side than the purpose-seeking side. Now, some of the advice that Paul gives is that if you find yourself being far more on the purpose-seeking side, it would make a lot of sense for you to be more deliberate to bring some pleasure-seeking activities into your life. And the reason for this is because of the thing that I mentioned earlier on the hedonic adaptability, the fact that we get used to stuff. So if I keep on doing the purpose-seeking things, eventually I get so used to what that makes me feel like that I don't actually achieve the kind of happiness from the purpose-seeking as much as I could if I balance it with some pleasure-seeking. So since I spend time to think about that and I'm more deliberate to bring in the pleasure-seeking stuff, like, walking the dogs for me there's purpose, but really if I think about it, it's much more about pleasure than purpose, then, there's much more of a balance because I have more of a range of things that I'm bringing into my life. And the same for somebody who's on the pleasure-seeking side. If you are this pleasure-seeking machine, you don't have to completely go over to the other side. It's not about that. But if you are more deliberate to bring in some activities in your life that will be more meaningful in your life, more purposeful in your life, you will find that overall your happiness will increase as an individual. Now, the thing with happiness is that most of us don't actually spend enough time to pay attention to what it is that actually makes us happy. So we think a lot about being happy. We think a lot about what could I do that will make me happy. And of course, we might think something like getting that new car is going to make me happy, or getting married is going to make me happy. And just by the way, people on average, after getting married, it takes about 2 years for the happiness to wear off from getting married. So that it goes back to the baseline is basically what happens. So the happiness from getting married doesn't stay forever and ever and ever. You need to introduce new activities in the marriage in order to sustain the happiness over a lifetime. So if we are more deliberate to say what it is that gives me pleasure or gives me meaning, then I can choose to do more of the things that makes me happy. So now I want to bring in another concept, the fact that we have limited attention. So you all know we've got a system 1 and a system 2 type of brain. System 1 is fast, it's unconscious, it's energy efficient. This is where our behaviors and our patterns sit, and we respond to things without even thinking about it, versus systems 2's thinking, which is slow, deliberate, conscious, effortful, lots of energy is required. So most of what we do come from systems 1 thinking. For those of you who don't know the work, it's Daniel Kahneman, Think Fast and Slow. He wrote a book, got a Nobel Prize for the work. This is what really started off behavioral economics as a new field, a big driver underneath behavioral insights as well. So the thing about this is that we tend to unconsciously do things and pay attention to things that don't necessarily make us happier, because we've never taken the time to think about what actually makes me happy. How does it make me happy? When does it make me happy? And what I'm going to do after the session is I will send you a spreadsheet that I highly recommend you complete for a day, where you literally list your activities, more or less when did it start, more or less when did it end, how did it make you feel in terms of purpose, how did it make you feel in terms of pleasure, and who were you with, so that you can start to become more conscious of what it is that you are doing that makes you feel happier versus not, the things that you are doing that's actually not making you feel happier. Because I know a lot of people were talking about, and some of the questions earlier on is, what can I do to become happier? So the first thing is, we don't actually know until you start to think about it. What is it that you do that makes you happier? So I know it makes me really happy to play with my dogs. So if I know that, and then I don't choose to play with them for, let's say an hour a day, then I choose to be less happy by default, don't I? Yeah? So I want you to think a little bit about that. What is it that you think you could do in your life that would make you happier? So we talk about doing. So a big part of the principle here is that what I do is what impacts how I feel. And if I do the things that I like and enjoy, I increase my happiness. Whereas I put my attention on the things that I don't like and that doesn't make me happy, I decrease my happiness. Anybody want to add to that?
I think, Lita, it's Pina here again.
Yes.
Yes. So from what I'm getting out of this is, how can we integrate our purpose and being direct, deliberate, with pleasurable. So especially for somebody perhaps who's sort of at the midpoint of the continuum, I think integration would be very, very, very important.
Yes.
Because life's not about, being manic and doing everything pleasurably, because that's not being real. So that's what I'm getting out of this.
Yes.
But I love what you say is, I think it's going to be a lovely activity to actually think and reflect on what is it actually that brings me joy.
Yes.
And for me, it's music, for instance. For me, it's music. So without music, one often says, I'll be dead. Music is life. And yes. I think that, to me, it's purposeful and pleasurable at the same time.
Absolutely. And of course, you might not be able to absolutely clearly define and say this activity is only purposeful or it's only pleasurable. You might be able to say this activity actually has both of those. So you might have kicked off, and I know some of the comments here, you might have kicked off in the lockdown with cleaning the house and like, oh my gosh, I really don't like doing this, but there's purpose in doing it because I need to get the place clean. But then over time you start finding yourself that there's a pleasure component to that as well, because I'm active, it's perhaps replacing my gym activity. I feel fabulous when my house is clean and I'm done and I can see the results of what I've been doing. So maybe your response to the activity also changes from, in the beginning it's just purposeful, and then later on it becomes a bit more meaningful because the way you frame it starts to change, for instance.
Itha, can you hear
Yes.
me? This is Rita from Bloemfontein. The one thing that I believe will help you find the balance between pleasure and purpose is if you know what you value. Because if you know your core values and you're busy working within those boundaries, you find more purpose and long-term pleasure. Just a thought.
Yes. So Alita, I love that. But again, here is the thing. So let's say you have a certain set of values. Are you then actively on a daily basis being deliberate about doing those things that supports those values, or do you just go into unconscious behavior and we do things without thinking about it, and then at the end of the day we go to bed and we think, well, that was a pretty average day, it would have been nice if I felt happier right now, but maybe I'm not feeling happier right now because I wasn't purposeful in doing activities that reinforces my values.
Actually, your values reinforce your activities. So whenever you're busy with an activity, you measure it against you. It's just an exercise that I did years ago where you get down to not more than 7, preferably only 5 core values. And whenever you're busy with something, if you do it long enough, your intuition will tell you that you're outside of your value system and you just bring yourself back. If you have 5 words that you use to govern, if I can say, your life, whatever you do. So the values will govern what you're busy with, not what you're busy with to try and be within the values. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And there's a term for it, cognitive dissonance. So if your values is a certain thing, but what you are doing is something completely the opposite of that, then you will experience cognitive dissonance and you won't be a happy individual. Absolutely.
Correct. So it's more awareness than doing. And of course, gratitude is an attitude. If you find gratitude in everything around you, there's no way you can be unhappy. It's just not possible.
Yes. But Alita, sorry, I just quickly want to comment on that and then I'll open up to who wants to talk, is that I think there is, so for instance, I'll use a silly example. I know I will be a lot happier if I'm fitter. So that's an idea. I can think that, but unless I actually do something about becoming fitter, unless I do the actions of becoming fitter, I won't be happier. So I think it's very important to understand the doing part, the doing of what makes you happy, or the doing that will take you towards what it is that you're trying to achieve is what will make you happier. Not thinking I want to become thinner and thinking about what I'm going to do, or thinking I want to exercise and thinking about all the things I can do, versus actually doing the activities to become fitter or doing the activities to lose the weight. It's in the doing and in the choosing where I put my attention and my limited resources. I have limited time, limited attention span. What do I point that onto? And if I point it onto something that contributes overall to my happiness, and I understand what that is, then I increase my happiness. Anybody else want to add?
I've got a comment. I think it was Tina who was talking about doing housework, but she also loved music. So and I think you were making reference to the fact that you could actually combine the two together. So if you don't like housework, I
Yes.
agree with you totally. Housework is not something I go to for happiness, but I also do enjoy music. So put your best music on and dance around the place and clean up and dust and all that jazz. At the end of the day, you kind of get used to enjoying the housework because you've got such good music on, you know? So,
Absolutely.
and I also agree with a contributor who was saying about the values, because if you know what your values are and you are spending your time doing stuff that is not part of your value system, then by default, is that not unhappiness, so to speak? You're fulfilling your an area where you're not really happy because your values are the things that make you happy and content. So yes, that's from my side.
Now, Tracy, and you spot on, and that's exactly what I try to do, is put on some magical music and then do the tasks that that don't actually give me much pleasure, you know, the hard stuff. So listening to the music or radio, whatever it is, that actually, you know, carries one through. Thanks for that.
And
I wanted to say as well, I think part of it is it's a multifaceted, right? So you need to be also self-aware about your own emotions, about what triggers you and your values. So they all kind of work together. It's not either or, it's all and I think once we are able to work on our own self-awareness about our emotional literacy, as well as what makes us tick, what doesn't, it allows us to make better choices. So if I know right now being with my whole family is a little bit triggering, what can I do that is going to help me ease that emotion in terms of frustration and anger, and seek out what can bring me joy and bring gratitude into my life. So I just wanted to put that out there.
It's Bianca. I don't know if you can. I loved what you said earlier in terms of talking about something that you need to do versus actually doing it. And I recently read an article about self-care. And self-care is not lying in the bath and drinking champagne and eating chocolate. Self-care is identifying the sort of things that are making you anxious and worried, and the things that need to get done to make you happier and feeling more fulfilled, and doing some of the hard work and doing it, like doing that budget and doing that analysis of how you're spending your money, doing some of, you know, going out and swimming for 20 minutes, you know, just doing some of the stuff that's going to take you closer to your goals. And that was something very practical for me, that I'm not a victim. These are the things that I have in my hands. These are the things that I can control and I can do something about.
Yes. Yes, and from a behavioral science point of view, we know that if you want to change your behavior, if you want to start doing more of the things that make you happy, it's make it as easy and as effortless as possible for you to work towards the bigger goal. So I'll give you an example. So let's say I want to change a behavior such as I want to spend less time on Facebook and on my computer, and I want to spend more time reading a book. How many people you want to do that? Okay, want to read more books? I have lots of people saying that to me. So my overarching goal is I want to read more. So I can prime myself by putting books in every single room in the house. So instantly, when I see a book, I'm reminded of reading it. I might start picking it up and having a book in my handbag, or, you know, wherever I go in the car, it prompts me to pick up the book and read. Another one is I can see defaults. So defaults are those things that we don't think about necessarily consciously, but I can spend a little bit of conscious effort in the beginning to set a default, and then thereafter I don't have to make the effort. So in this context, in the case of wanting to read more, it would be to set my internet home page to a book review website. So when I open up the internet, the first thing I see is book reviews website. And what am I going to do? I'm going to start reading about the books and probably want to then go and explore some of those books. The other part of the behavioral science that is very fascinating is the one about making commitments, especially when we make commitments out there to other people, where people know that I've made the commitment, so therefore failing is almost not an option. So make a date with a friend to go and attend a book fair. So that's a commitment, it's with a friend, and of course I'll talk a little bit about friends in a moment, but that's a big part of happiness as well. And then social norms. So social norms is something like joining a Facebook group that reads and review books. So suddenly I'm surrounding myself with other people who likes to read books and review books. So I find myself in a kind of company where I am attracted to wanting to read more books. Okay, so when I put all those small little things in place, what do you think is going to happen to my reading over time? You think it's going to improve? Do you think I'm going to read more books and less Facebook? Yeah, but it's all small, tiny little steps. And what I'll do is after the session, I've got a 7-step action plan. It's not mine, but I've taken it from a fantastic book, and the reference is on the action plan. But I'll send you the link where you can download it, and you can actually use it for anything in your life. But maybe in the context of this topic, is maybe pick something that you know makes you happier, and then put in place a plan that you will actually do more of that thing that makes you happier. So I know I'm a lot happier when I read books, but I tend to spend time on Facebook. Okay, so that's the doing versus thinking part. Just to try and explain that. Yeah,
just from my side, I just think we differ as people, what we love and what we like, and what we value. That's different. And sometimes, because we might be very set in those of ourselves, that we don't realize that there's other things that make other people happy, that they value, that they really enjoy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So we need to be open to that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So the example that I'm using is just a personal example, and I'm not saying you all should read books. It's almost like this thing. You have to pay attention to what you are doing. And then the second part of it is pay attention to who you are doing it with. Okay? So right now we're in lockdown. So you don't have much choice around the with part, the physical with part. So you really need to focus on how can you enhance the relationships that you have with the people that you are with. So there's an activity that I would highly recommend. It's called 36 questions. So if you type that in, if you Google that, and I'll send you the link as well, but if you type in 36 questions, it's a series of questions that is phenomenal to deepen your relationships with the people that you are with at the moment. And you can take a question at a time. And then, of course, on top of that, then practice active listening. So the active listening is I ask the question and you answer. And when you answer, I listen with curiosity. I listen to learn about you. I listen to hear what is interesting about what you are saying. I listen to hear how it's different from how I would have answered the question. I listen without judgment. And I listen not to interrupt, not to answer, but I listen to learn from your answers. And then, of course, you swap and you give back the gift of listening to your partner. It's a very, very powerful exercise. For those of you who know Nancy Klein's work, Time to Think, it is about that active listening to somebody else. And if you have a series of very interesting questions, and these 36 questions really are, I think they take you beyond the obvious questions. That's fantastic. Of course, the other thing is that so we can't choose at the moment. We're physically spending time with. We had to make that choice before lockdown, so now we're stuck. But we can still choose who we want to spend time with online. And it's very clear that, again, that if you choose to spend, let's say, 20 minutes watching TV versus 20 minutes with a close friend of yours, and have a voice call or a Skype call or a video call. Luckily, these days we can have video calls. Isn't that amazing? You will probably find, if I ask you how happy you are after watching TV for 20 minutes versus how happy you are after talking to a friend that you really love and admire, I can guess what the answer is going to be. The happiness would probably be a lot higher after talking to the friend versus spending time watching TV. And so it's a choice that we make. So that is an interesting one again, in terms of happiness, to start becoming more aware of who are the people that you feel happy with, and then make more time to spend time with the people that you are happy with versus the ones.
Fred, ek is beïndruk met jou besigheid is en ek is nuuskierig oor hoe werk die klas gee van 8 tot 11. So vir watter groepe word daar klas gegee? En hoe lank is 'n groep op 'n slag met jou besig? Want seker goed.
Elana?
Ek is nuuskierig oor hoe dit werk. Okay, sien jou baie en ek wonder of jy in 'n hele kompleks mag oefen, want ons mag nie eers om die eiland loop nie, die mag nie besoekers kom en niks nie. So ek wonder of julle mag stap of nie. Okay, eers lekker bly.
Okay, I've muted her. I don't think she realized we can hear her. Yeah? So any comments on that in terms of choosing who you want to spend time with?
No, I totally agree with you, Taljaard. TV is such a waste of time. It's escapism that is so fruitless. It takes your time away. You don't think, it has no benefit as far as I'm concerned. But picking up the phone and speaking to somebody, whether it be on online or video, has much more worth than TV could ever give you. I wish one day that we could actually destroy the television and never have it in, and we can get back to basics of relationships with people versus a box. That's my feeling of television.
Thanks, Tracy. I think maybe some people on the pleasure side might disagree with you. A lot of people find quite a lot of pleasure from watching TV. But yes,
forgive me.
Sorry?
I say forgive me for my passion of television.
Don't worry, I feel the same. But I don't... of course, again, like Yvonne was saying earlier on, different people value different things. And I think there's a place for TV, but I do agree with you. I think it's taken over so much of the time that we could have been doing things that's far more productive in our lives. So the other thing, yes, Pina?
Sorry, I walk into often, in our home, we try not to have the TV in such a simple place. So we kind of have a set space where we go and watch TV. But often one walks into people's homes and the TV kind of dominates the environment. And the TV's on, albeit on mute. But then there are all these visual distractions.
Yes.
And it's almost, I'd love to say, because I'm not qualified to say, but it's somewhat of an addiction. I also pick up, when I've been doing a lot of business travel over many, many years, and people at guest houses or at the hotels, they put the television on immediately when they rise. And to me, I find it disconcerting. It doesn't, and sometimes I get a bit annoyed or irritated, and I place a values judgment on it, which is, I realize is not what I want to do. Yes. But it's just such a pity. I see it as it's a tragedy for me, because you're not present. You overlooking, you've got a hotel room overlooking the ocean, but yet your eyes are on CNN.
I am sure quite a lot of
hashtag.
I'm sure quite a lot of frustration and arguments at the moment are because of the TV on versus off during lockdown. But here's a couple of things, just a list of very practical things in terms of becoming more happy. And this is about doing happiness. So the first one is buy more experiences and less stuff. So rather than the fancy car, spend the money on doing something with your family or with your friends. It will give you far more happiness. This has been proven again and again and again. Switch between those pleasurable and meaningful activities. So don't get caught in only doing the one or only the other one. Find that happy balance for yourself in terms of what does that look like for you. So switch between those so that you never get used to any of them. And in that way you can tap into a nice range of emotions throughout the day, emotional diversity, and that tends to help us feel happier and be happier as human beings. Listen to music. That's a given, and it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter what kind of music, but our brains are absolutely fine-tuned to respond to music. So make time and an opportunity to play music, like we were saying early on, while you are doing the housework, for instance. And just a little practical thing that I do when I'm doing ironing, which I absolutely hate, is I put on my computer with a TED talk, and then it gives me a time to catch up on all the TED talks that I never have time to watch. And then suddenly ironing is over too quickly. So it's an amazing thing. Spend a little bit more time every day talking to people that you like, the conversation that we've just had. Spend a little bit less time every day glued to your computer and your phone. Yeah. This is a very important one. We tend to get so easily distracted. The brain is highly, highly distractible. That comes from a survival point of thing. You know, we want to pay attention to things as out of the norm, so therefore we get easily distracted. And it served us well when we were living in caves and lions were hunting us for dinner. But it's not serving us as well in the world that we find ourselves in. And when you're multitasking, when you're allowing yourself to be distracted so much, it tends to leave you feeling quite tired and actually less happy. So you need to become more aware of that try during lockdown, see if you can be more deliberate to switch your emails off and only check your emails, let's say once an hour for 10 minutes or certain times of the day. Switch the WhatsApps off, switch things off. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying block the time that you then go and spend time on that instead of switching between activities, because that is what's making you tired. If you stay focused on one thing at a time, you then start to go into flow, especially if what it is that you are doing is challenging. So if you can add a little bit more challenging stuff to your world of work or your world of lockdown, what is it that you can maybe, as some of you were saying earlier on, you've discovered some talents and some things that you never knew you had because you are stretching yourself. And if you do that with intention and attention, then then you go into flow. There's wonderful work around flow that I can point you to, you know, if anybody is interested in that. Any suggestions on that? Anybody else want to add to maybe very practical things before our time runs out?
Yes, but it's a little bit more impossible now with lockdown. But I find that just getting out into nature, putting your back against a tree, watching the ocean, it is so energizing, and it is an amazing tonic for the body. But of course, during lockdown, it's not possible. And then just one other thing, my apologies to you, Itha, because I have been calling you Taljaard, and it's actually Itha. My humble apologies.
Doesn't matter. So just in terms of the nature, if you can try and work at a window where you can actually look out on a garden, if you have one. If you can't, have a screensaver. So what you're seeing in the back here of me was actually when we were in England, but I was able to on Zoom put that as my background. So hopefully that's made all of you happier just watching some green trees. But try and have a screensaver that's of nature. And if you don't have, try and see if you can have a couple of, if you have got some magazines and stuff, cut out some, make a collage and stick it where you can see it. It will elevate your feeling of happiness. And if you can have a plant on your desk, it will also help you to feel a bit happier. And if you can't have a plant, if you can have a couple of flowers or something, but try and do something like that.
Itha?
Yes.
Itha, it's Sue.
Yes.
I want to suggest that we all start laughing more.
Yes.
Because laughter is good medicine. It helps boost the immune system. It busts the stress, and it is such a great thing to do, whether you're with family, friends, or even on your own. We've got to start taking our medicine. And when we start laughing, we release happy juice, and we become happier, even if our circumstances haven't changed.
Yes. And you know that just if you do that, you trick your brain into thinking that you're smiling. Yeah. So that's how amazing.
Exactly. I've actually just posted that on Facebook today. And that song, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Yes.
Because people mimic our smiles.
Yes.
And I want to say, even if you're out there wearing a mask, smile at everybody, and they'll see your smile through your eyes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thanks, Sue. That's a fabulous one. Here's another very practical one. Because of our circadian rhythms, I'm not sure if I said that properly, but try and increase your exposure to light in the mornings and during the day, especially blue frequency light. And if you can go outside, bright light, because that gives you a higher sense of alertness. And then, of course, like I said, before sleeping time, you want to start decreasing your exposure to bright light, especially blue frequency light, so that you can sleep better. Because if you sleep better, you'll be happier as well. Okay, so those are just little practical things that you could use. I think our time is up. If anybody else wants to make a final contribution, a final suggestion in terms of a practical thing to increase happiness right now.
It's Alita again. What about animals? Having animals with you.
Yeah.
They use animals a lot in helping people.
Yes. Yes, and I know that one of the things that you can do at the moment is you can foster an animal from the SPCA. So you would be allowed to go and get one and foster one. So for those of you who are completely on your own, and if you can, foster an animal. Anybody else?
I think as well as creativity, so and paint, that's one of the ways I cope, is get a canvas, get a piece of paper, and just paint. Don't have a plan, just make your brush go over your page and see where your mind is taking you. That's a wonderful way of just escaping as well and getting your mind to flow.
Fabulous, thank you so much.
What about colouring in? There's adult colouring in books. I mean, one could be listening to a talk or the radio or whatever, and a podcast, and then one could be colouring in, and one also has an assortment of colours, which can also be quite cathartic in a way.
Yes. What about something like going through some of your photo albums? Maybe some of you still have real photos. I have a whole box full of those. It'd be really nice to go through those, trip down memory lane, or even all your digital photos. This might be a great time to go and revisit some of those memories and think about what did you do, who you were with, and of course use the frame of what did I gain from that experience or in that moment, as a way of reframing and re-remembering that memory in a way that's positive.
I think, sorry, from my side, it's also looking at things that you're longing for, that you find that you're seeking contentment in. If you make a list of those things and you start working on them, it actually starts filling that void or that hole that you have within you. And it's just an amazing feeling as well.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. I think our time is finished. Does anybody else want to still make? Sharon?
I'm sure a lot of you have seen the video, because it has been doing the round. but it's by the ex-captain of a submarine called the HMS Turbulent, which is quite ironic. And he spoke about just some coping strategies for dealing with isolation. And if you think of, sometimes he would be submerged for 84 days at a time. And so they claim to be the experts. And he had, I'll just say it quickly because I know we're out of time, but he boiled it down to doing 5 things. Having a routine, and a routine is about chunking your time and having achievable goals. Secondly, maintaining standards. So simple things like making sure you are making your bed, washing the dishes, getting out of your pajamas, maintaining standards. Thirdly, we've spoken about it a lot, downtime from news. There needs to be time during the day where you're not being bombarded by what's going on. And then fourthly, escalate conflict. The environments are ripe for conflict, being in close proximity all the time, de-escalated wherever you can. And then the third thing is communication, ongoing communication, finding new ways of communicating. And I think it's a wonderful strategy. So if you Google HMS Turbulent and you look up what the captain has to say, he says it best.
Thanks, Sharon. Don't you want to just put that into the chat box? I have seen it. But the sound wasn't very good, so it would be nice if you just put that into the chat box. The other thing that I will share with all of you is there's a couple of happy movies. You know, if you watch those movies, you will feel happier. So I know we talked about the pros and cons of TV, but maybe there's also time and space to watch a really happy movie and feel happy as a result. How does that sound? Okay.
Yeah, maybe a last one from my side. I think lots of songs are being developed around the situation at the moment and different countries. So just to, at this point in time, to experience the hope that we get through this. Hope. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. HMS Turbulence, submarine captain. Fantastic. Thanks for that contribution. It's a fantastic contribution. Thanks, Sharon. Okay. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your participation. You can give me a rating 1 out of 10 in terms of my Zoom capabilities. Hopefully with the next one I'll be able to send you to chat rooms and you can have a more intimate conversation, because I'm planning on having many more of these sessions around interesting topics. And but it was lovely talking to all of you, and thank you so much. And we'll be sending a link to the recording and some of the recommended readings and some of the tips and things that people have been making on the side here, and I'll put all of that into a document so that we can all learn from each other. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Itha. Fantastic. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Itha. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Itha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Yvonne. Is that you? Thank you, Itha, so very, very, very much. Very, very grateful.
My pleasure.
And you sharing makes you happy. You see,
Always.
I can see that you derive a lot of happiness from sharing of yourself. Thank you.
Yes. I've recognized that I am a teacher. I can't help myself, so I have to not stop teaching. I just have to find different ways of teaching.
Yes. And this definitely has been such a catalyst for change, hasn't it?
Yes.
It's just thrust us into relative, unknown dimensions. Yes. I mean, here we are zooming away.
Absolutely. Look at this.
And how adaptive. I mean, it also shows how resilient we can be as a human spirit. I mean, here we work working with all these new high-tech stuff. Like you, I felt as though I was a real techno pleb, However, look at this. We've surprised ourselves. So bravo. Thank you, Itha. Until next time, you and your family, best wishes. Stay safe.